A very good morning to one and all once again. This is Kelvin Lee from Victory Multimedia. We are still on this tips and techniques on presentation, and this is made available for people who have signed up for our newsletter. Now the question that we want to answer today, or rather the tip that we want to share today, is a question that is often asked. And the question is, which background color is best for your PowerPoint presentation? A dark or a light background? This is one of the most commonly questions that been asked when people attend my workshop. They are very concerned that if you have a dark background, will it be too moody, too depressive, or should they have a light background, which sometimes might be too glaring. So today we're going to look at some of the dynamics of having a dark background and a light background, and listen to the recommendation that I have for you. Let us spend some time looking at the nature of having a light background. It has been estimated that out of 10 presentations, 6 of them will be using a light background. And why is this so? I believe if you look at around us, the books, the magazines and the newspapers that we see and read every day, what kind of background are they using? Well, generally they are using a light background. So it is also second nature for us. Whenever we start a presentation, we will use a light background. Let us take a look at what are the advantages of having a light background. First off the list is, of course, it gives us superb contrast. All you need to do is just have a very light background and you slap on some dark text, and what happens? You get to have very good contrast, which is something very important for us when we are doing a presentation. And what is the other element is that because it is bright, it gives us a feel-good feeling as opposed to a dark background where it can be a bit depressive. Okay? Now, what is the other advantage of having a light background? It is, of course, cost cutting. Imagine you have 30 people that are attending your presentation and you have 80 slides, and for 80 slides to print out 30 copies of it, that would really come out to quite a large amount. So if all of them are having dark background, what happens to the amount of ink that you're going to use is going to be quite costly. So for obvious reasons, when you're having a light background, it does cut down on the cost when you're printing out handouts. Let's look at the disadvantages of having a light background. And one of the key things is because it is light and very bright, when you stare at it for a very prolonged period, you get pretty tired. Okay, the eyes are not meant to really stare at a certain bright object for too long. It's just imagining yourself staring at the sun for too long. Now the other disadvantage of having a light background is that it's so commonly seen, and if the speaker is not charismatic, what happens? It becomes boring and your audience will fall asleep as well. So these are some of the dangers of using a light background. Okay, let us now look at the nature of dark background. Okay, dark backgrounds, or rather presentations with dark background, gives you an element of sophistication. It also gives you an element of mystery. Because it is dark, a lot of times you have a feeling that, wow, this is something very different. And as what I mentioned earlier, out of 10 presentations, 6 will be using a light background, leaving us with 3 to 4 presentations that are using dark background. So using a dark background becomes something that is rather rare. So people tend to sit up and listen. Now the other part about using a dark background is because it gives us the same feeling of a bedtime. Alright, because it is dark, it mirrors the actual situations that we are in when we are going to bed. Now let us look at the advantages of having a dark background. As I mentioned earlier, because using a dark background for your PowerPoint presentation is rare, people will tend to sit up and really want to know, hey, is there something fresh that this presenter is going to present to us? Or is there something mysterious that's going to be unveiled? It is the very same feeling like you're going to watch a movie. At the start of it, you have the advertisement and then it starts to introduce and the lights are dimmed down. So that is a very interesting feeling that actually works to the advantage of the presenter. and of course, as I mentioned, because it has the same atmosphere as bedtime, when people attend a presentation with a dark background, they are typically more relaxed. Now let's look at what are the disadvantages of having a dark background. Okay, one of the most important thing that actually fails the person who uses a dark background is the legibility. Now, if their text is not big like what we often share with the subscribers and people who attend our workshop, of at least having a font size of 28 for the body text, the problem is the background will slowly seep into the edges of the text and it will affect the legibility of the text that they are looking at. Okay, so this is one main factor. What is the other disadvantage of having a dark background? Is like what we mentioned, it actually mirrors the situation when we are sleeping. So a presentation with a dark background, if it extends over a long period of time, people tend to be a bit sleepy because you are in an aircon room and the slides are really dimmed down, and you seem to be ready for a good night's rest, especially after you have a heavy lunch. So this is something that we have to watch out for, especially if the speaker themselves are not very exciting or they are not very charismatic. So we go back to the same question: do we use a dark or do we use a light background? And my answer to that is, it depends. Okay, it depends. Why does it depend? Because there could be two variables that you can try out. Okay, number one, if your presentation is a short presentation, you could actually use a dark background for those reasons that I've stated. You give that feeling like a movie trailer. It's short, it's intense, and it is impactful. So this is something you can use to your advantage, provided you give good contrast, text that are big enough for people to read very clearly. Don't clutter the screen with too much information and really murder them with data dumping. So keep it short and use that advantage of having an uncommon, or rather an unusual background. Alternatively, what you can do is you can still use, if you have a long presentation, you can actually start off with a series or maybe 30 to 40 slides, spreading maybe to half an hour with dark background, and then when you reach a major juncture or a key point that you want people to listen up, you can actually change it to a light background, and it is like a wake-up call. So when people look at the slide, they'll be jolted from that sleepiness and that comfortable position and sit up, and that actually works to your advantage because people will have a very strong impression in that sudden emphasis in a key point or a sudden change in your presentation direction. So in conclusion, I just want to share this point is there is actually no right and there's no wrong about using a light or a dark background. As much as you can, experiment with the sales deck that you have, because sometimes it can be quite technical. You want to have good contrast, so you might lean a bit more to a light background. Other times you want to create a more emotional impact and draw the heartstrings of your audience. You might want to use a dark background. But the important thing is to constantly experiment with it, come down to something you're comfortable with and something that really helps you to put your message across. And more than anything else is you must create maximum contrast. Alright, whether you are having a light background or a dark background for your PowerPoint presentation, always aim to have good legibility and good contrast, so that when people look at the screen, they can read what is on screen. As what I always tell the people attending my workshop, if it's to be seen, it needs to be read, so that it will not cause any frustration. If you are interested in our workshop, we encourage you to visit www.figtree.com.sg, and at the home page there is a button for you to click so that you can find out more about our workshop. And we would also encourage you to pass along this newsletter to your friends who you think they might need it, because often we will give out freebies like PowerPoint diagrams for people as well. Okay, so this concludes this issue of the tip and techniques that I'm sharing with you. And this is Kelvin Lee signing off till we meet again. Have a good day and God bless you.